The paranoid, skeptical, post-Watergate America gave birth to the Sidney Pollack first-class thriller called 3 Days of the Condor. Released in 1975, this political thriller stars Robert Redford, Faye Dunaway, Cliff Robertson, and Max von Sydow. It's based on the 1974 novel 6 Days of the Condor by James Grady. It takes place in New York and Washington, D.C., and is about a very bookish CIA researcher who comes back from lunch one day to just discover that his coworkers have been murdered. He spends the whole movie trying to outwit those that are responsible for this deed. Joe Turner is the character that's played by Robert Redford. He's the CIA analyst that has the code name Condor. He works at the American Literary Historical Society in New York City, which is actually a clandestine CIA office. His character encounters a woman named Kathy Hale, played by Faye Dunaway, and he forces her to take him to her apartment. He holds her hostage while he attempts to figure out what the heck is happening. As time progresses, she begins to trust Turner, and they become lovers. I guess it's somewhat of a Stockholm effect. Robert Redford's character plays a cat and mouse game with Higgins, who is the deputy director of the CIA's New York division. Higgins is played by Cliff Robertson. A very interesting point of trivia is that Higgins's office is based in the World Trade Center. And Cliff Robertson, who played Higgins, is a keen aviator. He loved flying his private Beechcraft Baron over New York City. And the morning of September 11, 2001, he was doing just that. He was directly above the World Trade Center, climbing through about 7,500 feet when the first plane struck the Trade Center. Air traffic control instructed him to land immediately at the nearest airport, after they were giving out a nationwide order to ground all civilian and commercial aircraft following the attacks on the Trade Center. The film was actually shot in autumn, but it was set in the winter. On the streets where the movie was being filmed, saplings had to be defoliated in order to create that necessary wintry look. Robert Redford, who is an avid ecologist, checked on this process to ensure that no damage was being done to the plants that they were removing the leaves from. The van that is sent to the murder scene once the CIA acts to cover up the murders is labeled Augean Cleaning Service. This is a reference to one of the 12 labors of Hercules, where he is required to clean the stables in which the king kept 3,000 oxen. This cleaning had not been done for 30 years, and he goes on to do it in one day. He did this by diverting a river through the stables. The movie was filmed in a variety of locations in New York City, including the World Trade Center and Central Park. This happens to be the only feature film that was ever filmed inside of the World Trade Center. As I mentioned earlier, Higgins's office is based in the World Trade Center. And in actuality, the CIA did maintain a large undercover station at the World Trade Center. This was publicly revealed 2 months after the 9/11 terrorist attack. The station was disguised behind the false front of another government organization, and it served as a New York City base for spying on and recruiting foreign diplomats serving at the nearby United Nations building. It also served as a debriefing site for American business executives that were reporting events to the CIA after traveling overseas. Naturally, the station was destroyed during the attack, and it's said that a special team of CIA agents handled the cleanup in order to recover sensitive material that could have made it through and survived the building's destruction. It's said that Faye Dunaway and Robert Redford had a good working relationship on the film, but they didn't speak much at all. There was no casual conversation between them. Faye Dunaway is a lot of times known as being hard to work with. That's not noted at all in this film. It's said that Redford spent much of his spare time prepping for the movie All the President's Men, which would come out the next year. When Robert Redford's character is in the sporting goods store about to kidnap Kathy, or Faye Dunaway's character, he's peering out from behind a rack of parkas. If you'll notice, the hangers are alternated in and out. This method is used as an anti-theft device. It prevents someone from grabbing several parkas at once and making off with them. Robert Redford is very well known for being left-handed, and he carries out most of the task in Condor as if to be a left-handed individual. But in every scene that entails Condor writing something, he does this with his right hand. When you're so used to seeing Robert Redford do everything left-handed, it's pretty amazing how this stands out at you when he uses his right hand for things. His character, when he tracks the phone number, calls the phone company office and asks for a CNA. This stands for customer name and address. This service was only available to phone company employees, which is why Turner has to pretend to be one. Peter Yates was originally signed to direct this film, but that was when Warren Beatty was to star in it. When Robert Redford was signed, he preferred Sidney Pollack as a director. They went ahead and paid the $200,000 salary to Peter Yates, but let him go and brought in Sidney Pollack. Redford had worked with Yates when he directed him in the movie The Hot Rock in 1972, but he must have enjoyed Sidney Pollack's company better than Yates, because that's who he wanted. When Redford's character, Turner, arrives back in New York towards the end of the film, there is a sweeping pan across the city streets. To the left of the U.S. Armed Forces Recruiting Office is a movie billboard advertising the current feature, The Towering Inferno. And on it, you can see Faye Dunaway's surname. It's kind of interesting that Max von Sydow's character is nicknamed Lucifer. Several years before this movie came out, this actor became famous to American audiences for fighting Lucifer in The Exorcist. He plays Father Lancaster Mirren in the film. There's another interesting person that you'll notice that you recognize, but you can't really figure where it's from. It might be the mailman gunman who was played by Hank Garrett. He also played in the sitcom Car 54, Where Are You? He played Officer Ed Nicholson in that funny show. Now, Faye Dunaway says that she absolutely loved the thought of being kidnapped and ravaged by Robert Redford. She felt like this was anything but frightening. But there was one point during filming where Robert Redford had temporarily left the set, and the director, Sidney Pollack, took over his role to film Dunaway's reaction shots. She said that as the cameras were rolling, she was in position, and suddenly the director lunged at her, growling, and said that he was going to get her. She was tied up at this point, unable to get away, and not able to move much at all. The director kept moving toward her, with his eyes glaring at her, and in doing this, he was detailing all these horrible things that he was going to do to her, and it scared her to death. One has to realize that Sidney Pollack is a great actor, too. He kept on and on with this, just terrorizing her, so that he would get the right reaction shots for this scene with Redford. But in all reality, Faye Dunaway was scared to death during this filming. Sidney Pollack did the best at getting this great response out of this actress, but acting had very little to do with it. She was just reacting. The movie earned about $9 million in theatrical showings in North America. And it truly is a well-made thriller that's extremely tense and involving. And when viewed at that time in '75, it made it that much more believable because of the recent experience with Watergate. Take a look at this great mid-'70s film. You'll probably enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.